Broadcasting live on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. In the evenings on WCPT 820 Chicago's Progressive Talk. And in the nighttime hours, 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle. It is the Matt McNeil Show for your Tuesday. Good to have you with us today. 952-946-6205. Right into it we go. Cliff Schecter is kind enough to join us. Cliff's Edge is the YouTube page. He's got a Patreon link there. Make sure you sign up for that as well. Follow all of his content because it is exceptional. He's kind enough today to join us to talk some politics. And maybe I'll let you have a little Yankees time if you'd like, my friend.
Well, I think we picked the wrong night. I mean, I could have done a wrong day. I could have done some Yankees time 2 days ago. Wasn't so fantastic last night.
Well,
we'll see.
Well,
It'll be an interesting series. It's kind of a fun throwback to the rivalry of the late 70s, early 80s.
The George Brett years, yeah. I remember those, yeah.
Oh, yeah, when George Brett would, come out spitting mad because they'd say his bat was corked and he'd, lose his mind. And, yeah, I mean, those are, 8-year-old kind of memories. I was an 8-year-old. So it's kind of cool to but look, they're a very good team. The Yankees are. If they do what they are capable of, they can beat anybody. Will they? I guess we'll have to see.
We'll have to see. I wanted to get into a little bit of campaign stuff now because, I mean, there's a lot of things where we can touch on, obviously. Trump giving the COVID test to Putin. Okay, great. When his country was dying on record levels, making sure Vlad was okay, just tells you everything about that guy. But I want to actually get into all
those private meetings. I'm sure there were no trades discussed there of maybe, hey, how about you let me do what I want in Ukraine? I create FEMA and immigrant Asian scandal.
You remember all those empty envelopes down at Mar-a-Lago with top secret stuff. My guess is those were shared over coffee with Vlad.
Oh, yes. I mean, again, I'll let you get to your question, but you just have to stop yourself every once in a while. And I won't use the curse words I would use on my channel, but just say, I can't effing believe that this person is even in the running, was even allowed to run.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we're going to suffer for this for a long time because I do think we're going to kick his butt. And I do think there's going to be people that are going to go down with him. He's going to take them down. But, I mean, the degradation of our system, what people are willing to accept and make excuses for, I don't know. Some of that you don't come back from. So it's not a good thing.
I want to go over some campaign things, though, because you and I have followed. This is not our first campaign. We have followed a lot of these. Are you hearing – I'm hearing rumors from conservatives that are saying that – okay, I'll give you an example. In Minnesota, the Minnesota House is up for grabs. The Republicans are trying to do that. That is basically where all the volunteers and the door knockers and all that stuff are coming from, as Minnesota State House races, not the U.S. House, but the Minnesota State House, that there really is no statewide organized campaign. The U.S. Senate race is not organizing. The Trump campaign is not organizing. It is a mess, and so they're frantically trying to piece together a get-out-the-vote campaign on the right. I don't think Minnesota is unique. I am sensing and actually hearing from people who are saying – really, there's just no, as a usual campaign goes, there's usually a structure there. And for the Republicans this time around, there just is no structure.
So I'll tell you exactly what I heard. And, this has been going on for a couple months now. Donald Trump, obviously, legal trouble, needs money for things. Yes. Lara Trump, or Lara, or whatever her stupid name is, needs money so she can sing like a screaming goat. Melania needs money so she can tell us about how her naked pictures were art and every other grifty aspect of this family. So I'd heard this a while ago. I'd written about, but I also know some folks on the Republican side, that they were not ramping up a real get out the vote campaign. They were going to have a midterm level get out the vote campaign, and they were hoping that super PACs would fill in the rest. Well, you can't directly communicate with them. Not that Republicans wouldn't just go ahead and break the law. I mean, we've never seen them do that before.
Vlad Putin at Mar-a-Lago. That's right. Exactly.
But at the same time, there are certain things that really can only be handled best by the campaign. Yeah. You know what I mean? Negative hitting ads, anybody can do. But there are aspects, and this is one of them, as somebody who's worked on 3 presidential campaigns and God knows how many statewide and local. I will tell you, having your own campaign that is most invested in your campaign winning, that is best organized with your campaign materials, you know what you have, You know what you don't have. You know who you've talked to. You know who you haven't talked to. It's just to try to outsource that to super PACs is insane.
Yeah.
And that's why when people have tried to argue with me, or not people, right? When dumb coughs have tried to argue with me, oh, Trump's winning, and I said the whole time, what I've explained very clearly what my problem is with various polls, that I don't just go believing them. Look, there've been one or two that have shown like Kamala Harris up 8 or 10 in Michigan. I don't believe that either. Anything that doesn't make sense. I look at the preponderance of polls, but I look at other factors as somebody who's worked on many of these things that determine them. Incumbency, economy, these other things. And get out the vote operation is one of those things. The Democrats suffered. One of the reasons that we won in 2020, but we suffered a lot of down ballot losses, was because we actually cared about people not dying, unlike certain other parties. And so we weren't going door to door because of COVID in the same way. And it really cost us among certain key communities that needed to be turned out. You didn't see that in 22, right? Mm-hmm. So although you did in some states, actually in Florida in 2022, we'd never sort of put the band back together. Now from everything I've heard, the Democrats have the best turnout operation, or at least have put the most money, resources, the smartest minds into it that they've ever done before. Mm-hmm. And the Republicans are running a midterm one. That can be the difference of 2 to 4 points in an election. And when you're talking about swing states, 2 to 4 points, even in a place like, Florida, Ohio, can make a hell of a difference.
Well, so, and
you're hearing correct things.
Minnesota, we have I think the reported volunteers, and once again, these are reported by the campaigns, but it's a 10-to-1 ratio, Democrats over Republicans. And we're not technically a swing state. When you look at the Pennsylvania lineup and what the Republicans are reporting, the Democrats are reporting, the individual campaigns, Harris is mopping the floor in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin.
Yep.
In North Carolina, they've opened up a lot of stuff down there where they can, obviously, help with the hurricane. But
Florida, they opened up huge number of offices in Florida because they've said from the beginning, did the tour there, that they consider it winnable, a swing state. They're going after it. I don't think they've done as much here in Texas, which are two that are kind of on the bubble. But I think of those three, they looked at everything and thought Florida was where they had the best chance. But I even think they've got some offices set up here in Texas. I don't know if Trump has any. So again, and at the very least, that's going to help Sherrod Brown and Colin Allred, right?
Yeah.
It's certainly going to help Debbie Mercazzo-Powell in Florida. And again, by far the most important race is the presidential for all the various powers it gives, and for the creepy, weird orange pincushion on the other side who we're running against. But when you look at obviously on the Senate level, if we come in and we're stuck with a minority or a Joe Manchin majority again, I will often point to your state. Look at what happened after they took back the state house and the state senate. The sheer volume of incredible legislation that was passed that made a difference in people's lives, that showed people, because we are now on the same side as most people on issues that win with 70% of the vote. They get bottled up in filibusters publicly, in the Senate nationally, so they never get a chance to be voted on. But if you get a chance to vote on background checks, 90% approval. You get a chance to vote on codifying Roe versus Wade, 70% approval. You get a chance to vote on an assault weapons ban, 70% approval. Mm-hmm. On stuff dealing with mitigating climate change, 70%. You can go on. Family and medical leave has like 80% approval. Mm-hmm. You get to actually vote on these things and not have them paid family and medical leave, I should say, and not let them bottle these things up so people never see them. They get it, or they don't get it when it comes to their turnout operation, clearly. But if we eliminate the filibuster and get to pass those things, it will change the world because we will have delivered for so many people. I think the Republicans literally will be out of power for a generation.
Well,
I think you'll be looking at a New Deal style period of time, and then we'll have to deal. The last thing I'll say is, obviously, we're going to have to deal with the insanely, ridiculously corrupt and stolen Supreme Court to make sure they don't overturn these things. And luckily for us, well, it's right there. It's right there in the. Oh no, that's right. It's not in the Constitution how many members there are, and whether we can impose term limits or whether we can impose and say you have 18 years to serve and then you're done. By the way, we're going to impeach you, Clarence Thomas, because you've committed any number of crimes, and we're going to raise it. No, not from 9. Again, let's see what Democrats do, but from 9 to 13 to me I mean, we never are swinging for the fences. The truth of the matter is we have not added to the Supreme Court since the 1860s. This country has grown by, 11 times? It was 30-something million then. It's 330-something million now. So beyond even the political impact of that is the impact on people's everyday lives. And, because the Supreme Court can't even take most of the cases. Mm-hmm. They don't need not 4 more justices. We need to, come pretty close to doubling. I think there should be something like 21 justices. And then you revolve who is on various cases, which depoliticizes them anyhow.
Yeah.
That, to me, is what should be done if we do it right. At the very least, there should be 17 of them. And I hope they go that route. And if you do that and you take the power out of old, blackout drunk Kavanaugh's hands, buying the land upright Gorsuch's hands. I can't even make a specific joke about Clarence Thomas because I think he's committed every type of grift and every type of scandal you can, long dong silver. Can I say that? Yeah. I just did. Yeah. In any case, he and Mark Robinson like to frequent some of the same spots together. Let's just put it that way.
It prevents the ability for some guy to buy an RV for somebody and get the ruling they want to on a Supreme Court case.
Correct.
Absolutely.
And I'm just saying, that's the thing is that if the dual, there's a number of structural problems with our system. If the filibuster is gone, we have all this backed up legislation people have wanted for 50 years, 30 years that we get to pass. 1, 2, ridiculous, this situation with the Supreme Court, most of all, but all of our courts. We get to reform that and add and expand the courts and change and make sure there are strong ethics rules, all these kinds of things in place. 3, we get to do, again, we're never swinging for the fences on this. I hear people say, yeah, we should add D.C. as a state. Damn right we should add D.C. as a state. That's something else, by the way. You don't have to pass a constitutional amendment. That is done by an act of Congress, signed by the president. D.C. should be a state. Puerto Rico, if they have a plebiscite, they decide that they want to be a state, should be a state. And I don't think in this century territories should exist. Sounds a little manifest destiny, doesn't it? I would argue that we have Guam, we have the U.S. Virgin Islands, and we have the Northern Marianas, where if you combine those populations, you'll get yourself up pretty close to the population of Wyoming, which gets 2 senators. I believe they should get 2 senators, too. We could add 3 new territories and get 6 new senators. And my guess is Democrats would end up having 4 or 5 out of those 6 every time. And you'd start to solve some of the South Dakota, North Dakota, more cows vote than people issue in the Senate.
Well, we got to take a break. I want to come on back because I think all that stuff is, long overdue indeed, and we can fix it. But I also want to talk a little bit more about some good numbers, I think, for Harris. Cliff Schecter joining us. We'll take a break. It's the Matt McNeil Show.
Runways I walk, boom, got go pop.
It's the Matt McNeil Show. Cliff Schecter kind enough to join us today. Cliff, so there's one number that doesn't make sense, and I'll get to that in a second. But when we talk about real numbers, because polls, as you say, you really grain of salt. Absentee ballots. There are a few sites I'm keeping track of. One is a guy named Christopher Bosey, who is been keeping track of the absentee ballot returns in some of these toss-up states. And right now, especially Pennsylvania, really favoring the Democrats. It's like 70% of the returned ballots are from the Democrats.
Wow.
So it's a tremendous advantage. Once again, that's a snapshot of right now. Things could change, but looking good.
Obviously, all of these are. Yeah.
And so it's a good sign that the early voting is helping there. Michigan as well, North Carolina as well, Florida, there's a Democratic advantage. And so there are these things that are out there. Plus, of course, we talked about the fundraising advantage they've had, although I think Harris has still not released her September numbers yet. But, she has had
I think they're trying to add every last dollar in there because they're going to be unbelievably ridiculous.
Yeah, I think
I really
agree
do.
with you.
I'm not just saying that. I'm in that game. That's part of what I do, raising money for Democrats. I know we've raised a ton. And it's not been that hard. People want to give to that ticket.
Yeah, and they had Trump had 160, but the Democrats had 55 million just in 2 big fundraisers in California alone in September. Just alone in that. So I agree wholeheartedly.
Just those 2.
Yeah.
Well, I'm shocked there. because the Democrats obviously had like Bruce Springsteen and George Clooney, and the Republicans had Chachi and Ted Nugent's guitar. And I don't see how those wouldn't bring in the kind of numbers. Maybe maybe a clip of John Voight's hair from his mullet in Deliverance. I'm not sure. In any case, that's what they have show up there. But more to the point. Boy, where was I going with this? Before I started making mullet jokes and the rest. Like fundraising. It's not only these numbers we're talking about here. This actually relates to the point you were making earlier, which is Kamala Harris. First of all, their campaign, while Grifty McTrump's campaign sat there and used it on his legal fees for his 487,000 trials, and now another one will be coming because the Haitian immigrants have sued him under an Ohio law for putting them in danger. He's used it for that, and again for the goat screamer, Laura Trump's singing voice, and whatever. They said right away that their only priority was getting Trump elected, which it really isn't. It's just legal fees and grift. But I guess secondarily getting him elected. They have given no money, which is why the Senate campaigns are underfunded. They've given no money to the House campaign organization. Kamala Harris gave something like $25 million, I believe, to the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. She gave $25 million to the Democratic House Committee, and she's given $2.5 million, I believe, to each state party. So if you think about that, obviously, yes, there's local advertising that goes along with that and whatever, but there's also turnout operations that go with that. That helps coordinated campaigns, as we call them, so that people are working and getting votes out for all of the candidates. And I assume it's the same where you are. I mean, besides everything else we have going on here, we passed that abortion ballot last year, the one that the polls told us would be close. Why I don't trust the polls at all, 57-42. We crushed it. Well, now we have, and they're lying about it openly, but we've got even some Republicans now doing ads pushing back, including the former head justice of our Supreme Court, pointing out that issue 1 on our ballot here for anybody from Ohio, you vote yes, because that is going to kill gerrymandering forever here. We will have a ballot amendment. You don't understand what that will do. We will immediately, when you add in the excess COVID deaths, and I'm sorry, they did that to themselves. On the right, a study was done that showed that some of the other factors of younger folks moving into the 3 Cs, as we call them, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, and people and older folks dying in the rural areas and nobody refilling, nobody moving in. What you get, you add in the un-gerrymander, which also skews it a couple points their way, and even in a statewide election, suddenly we're a swing state again. Plus, we've got 3 Supreme Court justices up, which means we take over the state Supreme Court, and we're running on all of the fact that all 3 of those state Supreme Court justices here have said they want to overturn our ballot measure if they can figure out a way to do it because they're anti-choice jerks, which means they've just given us an issue to hammer them on. So, that's why that money matters. That fundraising you're talking about with Kamala Harris matters because she has a ton of money now for her campaign. Well, but what they're doing is they're building a movement. They're getting it to everybody, and that is going to make a huge difference everywhere. When you're talking about the Minnesota House, that will make a difference there.
Well, and the ad buys they've got scheduled are going to be massive. You are going to see Harris ads everywhere in the next few weeks, and that's a good thing. Here's one thing, and I want to get your thoughts on this. There is one number which goes against this, and that is registered voters. There's a lot of Republicans getting registered, but that's it. It's a sole individual number. There's not anything else backing it up, which makes me wonder if this is what these companies they're paying to try to get Republicans active, all they're doing is finding people, registering them to vote, registering them as Republicans and saying, see, we got this. I get the impression that's what it is. It's a grift by these companies against the campaign where basically they've just created this number. Right. We got all these people registered. We've done our job, even though many of the people that are getting registered are either not knowing they're being registered or not knowing they're being registered as Republicans.
Correct. That would be my guess.
Yeah.
So, as much as I'd love to say I know that definitively, I can't. But if you think about it logically, the fact that they've outsourced all of their field operations means that super PACs are doing it and other groups. Gee, what's their motivation if they're getting paid by, registering people? If they'll go to the local zoo and start registering, they'll start registering like spider monkeys and
pick me hippos.
Exactly. I mean, we've got the very cute little hippo here, in our zoo, and you can come and see Fiona and register. So I mean, I mean that's the problem. Again, when you outsource it to people. And look, I've got a super PAC. I'm not saying that people have to be dishonest to have them, but there are a lot of people who are if they don't handle it right. So I would want to see more on that before I would trust that that is anything of a positive for them and not just somebody checking boxes so they can get paid.
Walls last night on Kimmel, you catch him at all?
I did not. Was he good? I'll check it out if he was.
A little slow, but then it got going. It was a good time, and you can tell Walls just has that. I think that all these late night hosts are so used to certain kinds of politicians, and Walls is just not that. And so by the end of it, it's
he's
like
the avuncular. You just gotta, the way he's a little nervous beginning of the debates. You just gotta get him to relax and let that avuncular side of him out, and then he's like the most fun guy in the world to be around.
Oh yeah,
at least I haven't been, but he seems that way.
Oh, he is. He is. And, I mean, you saw the 60 Minutes interview. And, by the way, the beginning of that 60 Minutes thing, too.
I did see that.
What wonderful was it watching 60 Minutes absolutely just with factual truth decimate Trump at the beginning?
It was awesome. And, that maybe that's what happens when you cancel on them. You piss them off. Instead of decimating him, he could have been on there during that time probably answering those charges and at least trying to, to BS his way out of it. Instead, just taken apart. Again, you have to look at all of these things. The preponderance of everything says it's not good for the MAGA movement right now. So, let's just keep fighting. Don't take your foot off the pedal until we hit November 6th.
Absolutely. Keep your fuel on fire there with Cliff's Edge, the YouTube page. All the content you need to make sure you're making informed decisions this November. Cliff Schecter, Cliff's Edge. Cliff, thank you very much. We'll take a break, come back.
Thanks,
it's the
buddy.
Matt McNeil Show.